I got to change my life. And it was at that moment that I fell on my knees and I asked God to change me. And believe it or not, my prayer from that point on wasn't to come home. It was, God, don't send me home the same way that I came in.
Welcome to the Path Forward podcast. My name is Augie Ghilarducci, and I'm the host. And I have a guest with me today, Dr. Chico Tillmon. And you're going to hear an amazing story from Chico. And I will tell you that I met him before the pandemic, just before the pandemic, and I had seen some work he was doing, and I reached out to him, and I wanted to see if I could get on his calendar because at that point I'd gotten out in 17, so this was probably around 19 or so, and I was starting to really get into a lot of different facilities, but I saw the work he was doing, and I wanted to connect and see if there were some things that we could do together. And since then we've formed a friendship, and I'm so grateful to know him, and I'm grateful to him for being here to as a guest on the podcast, because I think for the men and women on the inside, when you hear his story and all that he's done, it's almost amazing. In fact, somebody should make a movie about it. Oh, wait a minute, maybe we'll talk about that too. So there's some really great stuff here, and I encourage you to sit back and let's get started with Chico. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And can I just start with some basic, your background, where you grew up,
Yeah.
and tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Dr. Chico Tillmon. I'm originally from the west side of Chicago, um, born and raised a native of the west side of Chicago, from the Austin community. And if you are familiar with Chicago, the Austin community is the largest community in Chicago, but also it's the most underserved. It has the highest unemployment rate, violence, crime, and all those other social determinants of health that causes a community to have challenges. Just a few other things. Went to school, did pretty good, but I grew up in a interesting family. It was dichotomous in nature, meaning um, the women in my family worked and were productive, went to school, did the right thing. But all the men in my family were in gangs, sold drugs, all type of subculture behavior. So even as a child, I grew up somewhat confused because the representation of a man in my life always involved some type of criminal activity. And so I think, that's what that was the big turning point in my life. Like it appeared like women did the right thing and men always had some type of angle or was engaged in some negative activity.
And so at some point, it led to you facing prison.
Yeah, you know what? Initially, I was a kid that was pretty bright in school in the gifted program. Did well in high school, honors and everything, played basketball. However, and when I was in high school, my mom went through a divorce and went into mild depression. And I was 16 years old and trying to take care of myself. So that led to me first selling marijuana to survive, really like to, be able to go to school and stuff and function. And then eventually I went to the Air Force National Guard. I was trying so hard to do the right thing, but it was during the crack epidemic, and many of my friends that I went to school with were making $10,000 and $20,000 a day, and here I was going to school in the Air National Guard, and on any given day I might have $50 to my name. So those opportunities uh, led me into a life of selling drugs, which eventually uh, led to me being involved in a conspiracy and going to a federal institution.
And how long were you incarcerated?
I was sentenced for 20 years and I did 16 years, 3 months in federal institutions.
Can I ask some of the places that you were in during those 16 years?
Wow. The first place I went to, of course, was MCC Chicago. I was in Minnesota. I was in Pekin. I was in Duluth. I was in Rochester. I was in Talladega. I was in Atlanta. So initially, I did my first 8.5 years in Pekin because Pekin was the closest institution to Chicago. However, Pekin was when I went to Pekin, it was really like a USP because it was during the time of the Oklahoma bombing, and two of the wings from Terre Haute were sent to Pekin. So it was the same mentality as a USP because they emptied out the USP in order to build Death Row and Terre Haute. So it was interesting to say the least.
So, what I'd like to really talk with those that are watching this and their families, what are some of the things that, as you look back now, from where you're at, what you've achieved, what are some of the things that you did on the inside that contributed to you being able to get out and do wonderful things with your life?
It my I'm gonna be honest, right? My process in prison was both productive and counterproductive. I think there are a lot of things I wish I had done, but the thing that really prepared me was really going to church and changing the way I think about life, getting a moral compass so that I I no longer had a desire to do things that will harm people. So my belief system changed. That's the most important thing. So now I was more conscious about the decisions I made and the impact not only it had on me, but also it had on my family. And I had this epiphany in church, I mean, in prison, because I was involved in a riot one time, and my mom had came and seen me, and she was like, "I'm done." She was like, "I love you. I'm gonna, make sure you have some money on the books when I can." But she said, I can't continue to come see you and you involved in all of this foolishness." And at that point, I had lost my dad. My dad had died. My grandmother on my father's side had died. And all I had was my mom. And I said, I can't lose my mom. So I said, I got to change my life. And it was at that moment that I fell on my knees and I asked God to change me. And believe it or not, my prayer from that point on wasn't to come home. It was, God, don't send me home the same way that I came in. And I began to change the people I hang with. I began to hang around people who had a desire to do the right thing. I began to hang around people that were in church and people that were positive, as opposed to hanging with people who still wanted to talk about what they did that was negative in the street, or still were talking about negative things they wanted to do out. That's the biggest thing I did was that. And also, I began to take a few classes. I say, you know what? I got to start taking classes. But the biggest thing, one of the things that really helped me was fighting my case. And the reason why I say that, even though I didn't win, uh, the rigor of reading for hours in the law library and shepherdizing cases built mental stamina so that when I came home, it allowed me to progress in school because I was already used to reading and trying to understand things that were difficult.
Wow, a lot of stuff there, right? So, I one of the things that we talk about is the law of attraction. And so when you're talking about, you start to change the people that you associate with and what have you. It's kind of like that what we put out there is what comes back. If you're viewed as a positive person that's serious about getting on with your life, those are the people that are going to want to associate with you. And unfortunately for us, for some, it works the other way too. So that's one side. And then the other side is the discipline of, I mean, I think many of us that were facing a fairly long sentence or a long sentence spent time in the law library. And when you talk about building mental stamina, I mean, it's exhausting for me to just think about sitting down with those books, because in those days they
Yeah,
were books off the
yeah.
shelf, right? And you have to
It's
find
like
one
you
and then go find another, but somebody took it back and hid it in their locker, and you can't get the one you need and what have you. So, but I mean, I get exactly, and I've never thought about it that way, of
yeah.
how that prepared you for what you've gone on to do. So that brings us to the point where you just kind of share with us the story of your release. And you've got two tracks that I'd like you to really emphasize. One is the academic side, which is amazing. And then the other is the professional side, with how your background and your academic growth has led to your career path. So
Yeah.
if you would share those two things, I know the audience wants to hear about that kind of thing.
Let me start by saying one of the biggest things prison taught me is gratefulness. Like, because I think in prison, just think if a person sends you $20, which in the scheme of things isn't a lot, it means the world to you because they thought about you. And so I came home grateful just for the little things, to be able to move around. Like I counted everything a privilege because so much was taken from me, that I appreciate everything that anybody do for me. I appreciate the fact that God allows me to wake up every day. I appreciate everything, and I take nothing for granted. To be honest, as I said, I was hanging around people that was in the church, and initially I thought when I got out I was going to be a pastor or a preacher, and I am a minister at my church. But when I got out, I saw the abundance of churches. It was churches on every other block, and I prayed. I said, God, I said, the last thing we need is another preacher. I say, to compete with all these churches. I say, some churches two doors from one another. The small churches. I say, Lord, I don't want to steal nobody. I say, God, I don't think that's the plan. And it was a situation where it was one of the guys that was my cellie. I was going to see him in Chicago on the west side, and another guy that I grew up with were involved in this kind of gang war, and people had got shot on both sides. And I was like, what? And by me caring about both people, I was able to mediate the situation because I had relationships with both people. And, and when I did it, I thought nothing of it. I thought that was just the right thing to do. Two people, you care about it. But when I did it, the response from the community, from the city, it was like, whoa, we've been trying to stop this for the longest. And oh my God, what did you do? Or what did you say? And I said, I just, talked to two friends. And it was almost as if my purpose found me, because I had never heard about violence prevention. I had never heard about ceasefire or cure violence. And from there, the euphoria, and when they explained the magnitude of what I did, had you not stepped in, people would have continued to die. It began to settle on me, and I was like, this is what God has for me to do. And initially, I was a violence interrupter, just mediating gun violence. I was trained by the University of Illinois at Chicago and ceasefire. But to be honest, I always been a leader in everything I did, and I had all these type of ideas. But I'm gonna be. They weren't listening to me. They were like, "Okay, you just interrupt violence." And I asked one of my colleagues and coworkers. I was like, "What does it take for them to, you know, at least listen to something?" He said, "You got to go to school." And I was like, "That's it." So it was right after I heard that, immediately I enrolled in school, at Northeastern Illinois University and began my track to going back to school because I thought it was important that I be heard. And just being transparent, it was hard as hell because I don't want people. I think what people in the world do that's a disservice to people who are still inside is create this fiction about you gonna come home, you gonna get a job, you know it's gonna be okay or doom and gloom, no in between. It was hard. I worked 2 jobs and went to school and took 5 classes. But the rigor of prison, meaning structured and going, he got it, and the bell ringing at a certain time, control movement, prepare you for that because really it was like control movement. I go to work at this time, I gotta be here at this time, and it was systematic, and I just did what I had to do because what I saw is a future, and I said there's only 2 pathways to really success. One is education, the other is experience. I said the challenge with experience is typically with any job, they might want 10 years of experience for a bachelor's degree. And I say it's easier to do 4 years in school than to wait 10 years for a promotion. So I chose the educational route. Went to Northeastern, as I said. I remember the first time going in there for financial aid, and they said, how many classes you want to take? I said, I want to take 6. And the lady was like, you're not going to get no more financial aid if you take over 4. I was like, in my mind, I was like, no, I got to take 6 because losing 16 in 16 years, 3 months, you feel so behind. And I was 41 at the time. And I was like, I don't have time to go to school for 15 or 20 years just to say I got a degree. I want to be able to utilize it. So I was taking 6 class. I took 6 classes. Then I started taking 4. Um, and I graduated with a 4.0 and graduated summa cum laude, #1 at my school. But I was serious too. I think the difference between when you young and when you older or are is when I was young, sometimes you go to school, you're not paying attention. But when you're older, if I'm here, I'm paying attention to the teacher. I'm focused, I'm locked in, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to pass. And, I did it in like 3 years. Graduated on a Friday, enrolled in a master's degree program Monday. It was a 2-year program. I did it in 14 months. And I asked them, can I enroll in the summer? They was like, this unusual. Don't you want to celebrate? I was like, this wasn't the end goal. Um, Initially, I was just, thinking about getting a master's, but I had a mentor, and he's still my mentor, Dr. Lance Williams. He was like, you got it. I was like, what the hell you mean? He said, no, you got it. You can be the first to get the PhD or one of the first to get the PhD with your lived experience. And I was like, okay. So initially, some of you have to suppress like some of the things that we develop being in the street or in criminal environment still there, but you have to suppress it. So of course I wanted to go to the easiest school, find the easiest way to graduate. But my mentor was like, no, you're going to a research one institution so that when you get the degree, it's respected. So I end up going to the University of Illinois at Chicago. It took 6 years because of the pandemic and everything, and I got my PhD in criminology, law, and justice. But along with getting a PhD, as I was working with each step, getting a bachelor's, I became a program manager over an entire site. Then I became a senior program manager over 26 sites. Then I became a technical assistance provider developing sites and cities around the country. Then prior to getting a PhD, I became an executive director over an entire organization. And every job thereafter, I've been an executive director over organizations.
It's so great. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable when you think about it. So on the inside, I did get into a master's program when I got out, and I went to the first class at Loyola University, and I had a new computer, and I sat down, and during the first half of the class, I couldn't figure out how to get the Wi-Fi on. I was ready to walk out at that moment. There's a lot more challenges getting back into things like that, but I agree absolutely with what you said. I was a far more serious student after the experience of incarceration at an advanced age, that I wasn't looking to waste time, and so I focused on what was there. But I think that's a great message that you bring forward.
I want to bring you brought something up important, Augie. Now, when I did get out, my biggest challenge or hindrance was I went to prison in 1994. Windows came out in 1995. I had never did an email, never went on the internet, nothing. So my biggest challenge was technology. I didn't even know and I'm gonna tell you what I had to do. I had to be humble. I had to I'm talking about humble to a fact where it's almost embarrassing. Where now my 9-year old can do the things me as a 41 or 42-year-old man are asking students like, how do you get to Microsoft Word? Or how do you cut it on? Or it's not work. And childlike questions. But I had to be humble. And let me say something else about school, right? When I was in the PhD program, it was some subjects was hard. I was about 45, 47. I had to go to a 29-year-old white girl and say, "Would you tutor me?" So I want you to know, like, in order to get here, I had to have humility because I had never taken statistics and I couldn't really understand it. And the speed and the pace of the class was rapid, and they wasn't gonna stop to teach one person. So I asked, I said, "Would you tutor me?" I said, "I'll even pay you." And I was so blown away when she took the time. She said, "Of course," and walked me through. So it was so many people that helped me along the way, but I had to have the humility to be able to ask people and be able to say, I just don't know how to do it. Like put everything to the side and say, and tell them my story. Like I don't really, even with the computer, like help me, how do you turn it on? And what does this mean? And, it's a humbling feeling, and technology is constantly moving so fast. Even with let me say something that's crazy, right? Even with the text messaging, I was so far behind, right? Most people used to drive me crazy. I would send a text like a letter, tell them everything, and they would just say, K. I would be so livid and ready to throw the phone. What does that mean? And they would say, no. And then it took somebody to send me down. No, a text is like a conversation. You got to say one thing, then they say one thing. They say go back and forth. But initially, everything I wanted to say would be in this long text, and they would just put K or LOL or something. And I'm like, what? I didn't know what none of the acronyms mean. So those are the little things that you got to get over. But one thing I want to say, right, in my belief system and in my heart, I think people who are system impacted or on the inside are the most brilliant, innovative people on the planet. Because even when you think about committing a crime, there are so many variables that you got to take into consideration just to do one thing, that if you put that same energy into doing something positive, there's no way you cannot be successful. But there are going to be obstacles, and you got to be prepared that is it going to be hard? Yes, but I'm determined to do it just like I was determined to do wrong.
Great, great. So the my first day at work after I got out, the guy that hired me, and he was great, and he said, I've got to run out. Set up your LinkedIn, and he left. He might as well have told me to read a book that was written in Chinese. I had no idea what he was talking about. And the whole day I'm trying to figure it out. And there's a woman in the office. She was like an angel. She saw that I was jammed up, and she said, "Can I help you?" And so she actually helped me to do that. There were so many things that life moves really fast, but technology can be overwhelming, and asking for help is certainly, I think, essential. All right, so two things I want to make sure that those that are watching this are aware of. So you've had the opportunity to advance to really the highest level in the gun violence reduction and the work you do. So will you please share
I,
what that has been, where you've traveled to, who you've met? I think that
hey,
it's
let me just say this right. It's a scripture that say the pure at heart shall see God. Um, and the Bible say, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." The things that have transpired in my life because I really had a desire to do the right thing is unbelievable. So right when we had the pandemic, because of the work I was doing, because I was working tirelessly, and it's even recanting the story is unbelievable. I was selected as one of the people to be on the Biden Harris transition team. Now imagine that somebody's system impacted the on the team with the president of the United States when he's about to go into office. And initially, I was one of the people to help him develop racial equity throughout all of the departments. However, in the process of that, we had an onslaught of mass shootings, and he really wanted to come up with an idea to try to, prevent or respond to mass shootings. And I was a part of a group that met with the president. And first, we met with Ambassador Susan Rice, and we came in there with algorithms. We came in there with a literature review. We came up with a real formula to mitigate gun violence. They were so blown away that they enlisted us as subject matter experts for the White House. So now I'm like, I can't believe this, right? Um, and it was just insane to meet his staff on Zoom. But the president went a step further. We were invited to the Rose Garden the first day he opened it up after the pandemic with the staffers. So the day the staff came in, he invited us nine in to be able to honor us for the work we were doing for the country. It gets deeper. So now I'm working as a subject matter expert. The president had a bill he was trying to push, Build Back Better. He sent it to us, and we responded it wasn't strong enough. It wouldn't help enough people. And he asked why. We answered all the questions, and we began to tell him he needed to increase it to $5 billion. When the president changed it, we blown away. And then came the ARPA situation. I was a part of a team that helped write the policy for black and brown people and formerly incarcerated people to get stimulus and to get money throughout the United States. However, also we wrote in there about people that's working with reentry and gun violence to get money as well. Initially, it was in the bill, but they weren't getting the money. So we did a advocacy campaign called Fund Peace, and I was able to raise $2.8 billion. Me and two of my colleagues, Marcus and Stephanie, the most amount of money in the history of this country allocated to CBOs around gun violence and reentry in the history of this country. After that, it gets bigger. Um, I, I say the big jump from an organization having 200,000 and 300,000 to now having 2 million. I began to think about, with no training, with no assistance, a lot of people gonna go to jail. So I went to my friends at the University of Chicago and I told them I have this idea about developing or creating a CVI academy for CBOs that do violence prevention and the entire ecosystem. That's reentry, mental health. And they said yes. And now, currently, I run a school inside of one of the top 5 schools in the world, the top school in social science in the world, a CVI Leadership Academy, teaching leaders how to run organizations, how to create logic models, theories of change, mission state, everything, HR policy, strategic plan. I wanted them to learn how to run any organization. Lastly, get another invitation to the White House and meet the president personally. And he gave me his personal coin that he gives to heroes throughout the United States. And currently, now I'm invited to go to the vice president's Christmas party on Monday. And on Thursday, the president invited me to his Christmas party. So to say that my life is indescribable right now, and I wake up in disbelief, is an understatement. But it just shows if you committed what God would do.
I told you the story is amazing. And I'd like to ask one more thing of you. So it's just you talking to the men and women on the inside and their families. And you had mentioned before that you would have done some things differently. What advice would you give to those on the inside where they're going through the dark times, the lonely times, but to help them to really think about what life can be like after this ends?
I think the biggest shift in society is that if you can do something, there will be an opportunity. So this is my advice to people that's still inside. I wish, even if I'm not going to do it professionally, I had took a trade. It even saves money. I'm saying learn something, carpentry, plumbing, because now you have a vehicle to sustain you as you go through whatever else you desire to do. Even if you want to be an entrepreneur, now you have something to help you go down that pathway. And are you guaranteed a job? Some people say, well, I'm an ex-offender, or I'm formerly incarcerated, or I'm system impact. They ain't gonna hire me. That's not true. People are going to hire the best person that can do the job. When you get out, if a person never been to prison, come and try and paint a house and can't paint, the person not going to say, "Well, I'm going with the person that can't paint because he have." You still have to be good. So take it serious in there. That's what I'll tell you. If you get out and you took carpentry or plumbing or HVAC and you can't get a job out here, it's not because you've been formerly incarcerated. It's because you was slacking and really didn't learn how to do it. When you come home, if you great at some barbering, people are going to give you an opportunity. And for families, what I say is set realistic expectation and support as much as possible. Now, that support should be with time, talent, and treasure. I'm saying, even if the finances ain't there, it takes nothing to send a card or to write or to talk to somebody on the phone or to be the bridge to ensure that they talk to their children. It's little things. The things that people did for me in prison, I hold dear to my heart today, and it's nothing I wouldn't do for people like that. And I'm gonna tell you, if you just keep those principles and begin to build a regiment of working hard, the same way we do when we go to the weights every day, I take that job serious because that job can turn into a fortune when you get home. You could start off as a master plumber and come home and own your own plumbing company, or a master carpenter and come home and own your own construction company. But you have to be great at what you do. So I would take pride in what I do in there, not thinking I'm working to build. You hear so many mixed mess. You building the prison? Hell no, I'm learning a trade. So when I get home, I'm gonna take everything they teaching me and go home and build me a house. So I would change the way I think about my condition and family. I would just have an open mind, because just because a person had one lifestyle, people change. It's no way you the same person at 20 that you are at 40. So regardless, because some people say, well, people ain't gonna never change. It's People have to change. Like the way life is set up, people are going to change. And you want to support people changing in a positive way by continuously pouring positive things into them. That's what I would say. The one thing that I had that's been constant is my mom in my life. And at times, as I told you, she was hard. But once I got my act together, the last 5 or 6 years, my mom started coming back to see me once she seen and recognized that I had changed. So it was some tough love, but it worked out. So I say, man, be confident. And it's people like me and throughout the entire country, like Augie, that's here to help you. So don't think I ain't got nobody. Yes, you do. You got an army of people that have kindred spirits that are waiting on you. We love you, and we here to help you transition back into life.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And I hope and I'm sure that you've enjoyed what Chico had to say. Thank you for tuning in to the My Path Forward podcast. We look forward to seeing you on a future one. Thank you. I hope you'll join me in about 2 weeks for episode number 3. My guest is Celia Colon, who released just a short time ago and has accomplished some amazing things. She has a terrific story. Until then, keep your head down and keep moving for the door.